New footage shows this is how Ukrainian FPV drones take out dozens Russian troops' new arrivals in Avdiivka. With cheap kamikaze FPV drones, the kind more typically used by photography and racing enthusiasts, are now one of Ukraine's most valued weapons against the Russian invasion. In a report, a reporter visiting the Donbas region, Ukraine's front line, spoke to a 25-year-old Ukraine drone pilot called Pelaheya, who is specialized in taking out tanks, armored personnel carriers, bunkers, and sometimes infantrymen. According to the report, this was not happening a year ago when DJI Mavic 2s were employed to provide reconnaissance and drop the occasional bomb. Described as a dark omen to the future of robotic warfare and an ingenious invention for the needs of the moment, the killer FPV drone is cost-effective and speedy. FPV, which stands for first-person view, derives its name from the special set of goggles the pilots wear that allows them to control the drone in a way akin to a video game. Multiple clips posted online highlight the skill of the FPV pilots by grimly taking the lives of men fleeing for their lives. Enemy soldiers are not just a legitimate target and professional target, they are targets that excite me, a drone pilot in the 54th Brigade tells, in a sure sign that the war in Ukraine is a fight to the death, and destroying them does not involve moral doubt, it gives me moral satisfaction. FPV drones are such an ingenious solution that President Zelensky announced plans to acquire 1 million of them this year, enlisting 200 Ukrainian companies to manufacture the kamikaze drones and proposing that civilians start making them at home. The People's Drone Project was launched on January 13th, and participants can take a free engineering course to learn how to assemble a 7-inch FPV drone in their home. Ukraine needs a large volume of FPV drones because of their irretrievable nature. The devices cannot be recovered once deployed. Moreover, many FPV missions are thwarted with maybe only half reaching their target. You usually need at least 2 FPVs to destroy a tank or BTR-tracked vehicle. An experienced Ukraine drone pilot who has taken out 32 Russian armored vehicles tells. The war in Ukraine, which has come to something of a stalemate after Ukraine's counter-offensive didn't gain much ground, is in constant evolution, with drones being redesigned and tweaked. The conflict has made clear that what happens in the consumer drone market has implications in the battlefield. While a Ukrainian commander said that regardless of how many times his unit hit enemy targets on a key battlefront, Russian forces were always being resupplied. Timer, a commander in Ukraine's 11th National Guard Brigade, told that his unit was using drones to target Russian positions across the Dnipro River from the city of Kherson. But no matter how many times we hit the same places, the Russians are constantly replenished, he said. At the same time, Ukraine's forces on the eastern bank of the Dnipro River have been using first-person view drones loaded with munitions to strike Russian vehicles, the UK Defense Ministry reported earlier this month. At the time, the ministry said that Russia was unable to counter the Ukrainian drone attacks, likely because of a shortage of Russian electronic warfare capability in the area. The latest news comes on top of other struggles reported by Ukrainian soldiers on the left bank of the river, including being heavily outnumbered, difficulties transporting equipment across the water, and a lack of training among some soldiers. On Sunday, the Institute for the Study of War said that Ukrainian and Russian forces continued positional fighting on the eastern bank of the river, with no confirmed change to the front lines. While at the moment Russia lost 960 troops, a combined total of 124 armored combat vehicles, military vehicles and fuel tanks, and 51 artillery systems in a single day, Kyiv's military said in an update on Tuesday. As part of its daily update on the war, the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces posts figures on Russia's troop and equipment losses, and Moscow lost 960 soldiers over the past 24 hours, according to the military's latest casualty toll of Russian troops, bringing the total to 377,820. At the time, Russia has also lost a total of 6,214 tanks, 11,548 armored combat vehicles, 11,956 vehicles and fuel tanks, 8,947 artillery systems, and 331 military jets in the ongoing war, the update said. Estimates of casualty numbers vary, with Ukraine's figures usually exceeding those of its Western allies, but Moscow rarely shares information on the number of casualties it has sustained in the war. In September 2022, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said 5,937 troops had been killed since the war began. The Defense Ministry has since reported casualty numbers a further 3 times, confirming the loss of another 162 troops. However, on January 12, a joint investigation by the Media Russian Service and independent Russian news outlet Mediazona identified the names of 41,731 Russian military personnel who have died in the war in Ukraine since February 2022, and it said that the actual number of losses was higher than the figures stated in the investigation. The news outlets added that Russian President Vladimir Putin's convict army is making up a significant proportion of Moscow's losses in the ongoing war in Ukraine, and from reports suggest that a lack of training by Russia's military has contributed greatly to Moscow's death toll in Ukraine. The independent Russian-language news outlet Vazhny Istory reported on January 18 that, in the fall of 2022, Russia's military command threw thousands of unprepared soldiers onto the front line in Ukraine in an attempt to stop a Ukrainian offensive on Svatov, a city in the eastern Luhansk region.
Super.
Lyudmila Kovalkina, one parent of a Russian soldier drafted under Putin's partial mobilization decree in September 2022, told the outlet that her 23-year-old son was captured and forced to fight in Ukraine. Under pressure, son was sent to the front by force, and Lyudmila also added that her son wrote his last message to her from somewhere near Svatov, that he had inadequate military equipment, and suddenly stopped contacting her.